You hit?
Yes, I believe so.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 8th, 2023 Finance Committee for the Town of Reading. I am the Vice Chair. The Chair is joining us tonight via Zoom, but asked me to chair the meeting because it's a little easier to do in the room. So welcome, Ed, on the screen. I will brag a little bit. You were not here last week and we were able to approve the minutes by hand vote. It was extremely exciting for everyone. So any votes?
I saw. Yes, that's why I'm purposely joining via remote to make things difficult.
Just so that any vote we take tonight will be a roll call. Good.
Exactly.
In all honesty, thank you for being here. Thanks to all of you. Tonight's agenda, liaison reports. We'll do that very quickly. It's only been a week, so it should be quick. And then I think I'll turn it over to our town manager for major sections of the town budget, but not all of them. We'll do the rest of them next week. This week we'll be looking at the town account. We'll start with some general overviews, administrative services and technology, public services, finance, the library, facilities, and public works. We'll talk briefly about future agendas, and we are meeting next week, so that'll be that. And then we've got meeting minutes to approve. Sound good?
Excellent.
All right, liaison reports. Mr. Quorum.
After our finance committee meeting, the next day was a school committee meeting. They had the school resource officers who brought their dogs, which was a big hit. The school committee voted also to evaluate their council and consider a new, I believe, a special ed council. Just sort of I think they felt that the other council, Labor Council, they didn't want to shake anything up as they're going into negotiations, and didn't feel that any changes were necessarily needed there. There were some price increases, I think, which was what kind of motivated them to say, hey, maybe we should look at it, and maybe we should in fact have a policy or sort of a procedure that we think about this every couple of years. And I think that was the highlights for the.
Thank you.
Just to piggyback a little on the schools, this week, members of the Finance Committee got emails from the school committee following up on some of our questions from the last meeting. And one of the key things that we could explain to the public that we had raised, and some of us speculated what it was when we saw the big jump in assistant principal line. It was clarified that they hadn't created default lines for all the schools for assistant principals, so that line was including a mix of the elementary assistant principals, but then also, like I had thought, the additional director of academic achievement at the high school. And they clarified just a couple of other little things, so our questions were answered. I don't know, maybe it'll all get brought up when it goes before town meeting. It wouldn't change anything that we're voting, but it cleared up some things. And sort of related to evaluating new council, last night the select board had a discussion about new council that is going to be continued to the next meeting. And it wasn't necessarily new council just to say, are we getting the right value for our council? Or, what is the price we're paying? Should we look around? And there wasn't a unit. I think everyone appreciated the services, but there were certain high cost things, like they gave the example of the Christmas tree menorah issue, where a lot of money was spent after the fact. So just select boards looking at council. And then the other things that they discussed included a vacancy on our board that they mentioned. Maybe there were different motivations for recruiting. One member mentioned gift cards, which then I'd say all of us would say, well, we want gift cards, but also like recruiting posters or just different things. I guess nobody thought of my idea like discounts on property taxes, because then that would get volunteers proportional to the hours you put in. And lastly, the select board, the town manager gave his objectives, so a number of those objectives will probably be things that cross our path. Oh, and one other thing that is not really good news, which is that the Birch Meadow project is almost doubled in cost. We may hear about that tonight, but that's the ARPA money we gave is just a drop in the bucket. We kind of knew it would go up, so that will just give me pause about other projects that would be given optimistic estimates, be they Killam or the senior center. If Birch Meadow has almost doubled in cost, and that doesn't even have any buildings on it other than a restroom pavilion, what would happen with, we'll all have to think about that with costs of other things that are given to us. And that's my update.
It's a really good point, thank you. Any other liaison reports?
Ed Ross has his hand up.
Oh, Ed,
I'll lower my hand first. So just to piggyback off of Mary Ann's points from the select board meeting last night. I see Sharon there. So a couple things related. Sharon actually shared a great set of presentations. It's a municipal self-assessment from DLS. It was really impressive. The charts and graphs that that you can actually pull down from the site. It goes back historically, like I think it's 10 or 11 years. It gives kind of some great kind of visual. I can't say the word right, but it's you can see it visually, and it's got a lot of data on our budget, population, school enrollment, revenue, its sources, things of that nature. It was really interesting. There's a link that was in the packet. In the presentation that she shared, we'll try to get that around to everybody because I just think it's right for this group, and that typically a lot of the things we ask her for historically has kind of been in there. Free cash was in there, bond rating was in there. There's a lot of really interesting stuff, and the other point for Sharon, congratulations from FinCom. The best part of the evening, having a 5-0 vote for the next year. Probably the easiest thing they had to do all night. And then, one other point, just some discussion, and again, probably something that doesn't necessarily affect us per se, but water rates were discussed. And I think it's I don't think the select board votes on it until mid-April or later, but that was just something that was mentioned there. And then you're kind of echoing what Mary Ann said too about the review of town council. It was, it was it went kind of full circle, a lot of different, kind of discussion points. I think the only thing that, may be relevant for us, I don't know the process, and I don't know, cost implications, things of that nature, but that just, something to, be aware of when they look at it, kind of going forward. So, that was the only other thing I wanted to be able to add.
thanks, Ed. Can you clarify the 5-0 vote around Sharon? You alluded to it, but didn't say what it was.
For her contract for next year.
They appoint me every year.
Congratulations, and well earned.
Every year.
Yes. Thanks, Ed. All right, shall we jump in?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, great.
So I heard we're doing the whole budget in 1 hour, which is exciting. A lot of papers to go through. So we did print you hard copies if you're interested. I will just quickly introduce it, and then I'll hand it over to Sharon, who is going to do the town account projected revenues. What I just wanted to highlight is that we took a stab at making some slight changes. I'll say to the budget, mostly aesthetics, just changing the way that it's presented, the formatting. We hope that you like it, and of course, if there is any feedback, please let us know. I will say that we tried to copy some of the best practices that we saw on the school side. So any feedback, please let us know. Ms. Sharon?
Okay, thank you. So I figured it'd be easier for me to go over all these topics by sharing the financial forecast, although this is in the book. I think a lot of the information is in one spot, so let me share that. That's me. Okay. So we talked a lot about revenues last time we met on the first, so I don't know if you want to go into too much detail, but I figured I would just kind of quickly run through this kind of spreadsheet because it actually does have the accommodated cost and the revenues on it, so it'd be one shot to take a look at all of this stuff. So you can see that property tax revenues are up 3.5% over prior year. Then other local revenues are up 12.6%, and we discussed that that seems like a high number, but we're starting to return to pre-pandemic levels. Hopefully we don't have to bring back those projections, but we're seeing so many numbers exceeding projections even in the current year. So hopefully we're in a good space. And then intergovernmental revenues is your state aid, and we have that agreement with FinCom that we do 2.5%, and then any shortfall that we get when we actually know what state aid is, we can ask for free cash, although usually we don't need to. We usually can find something else within the budget to reduce, but FinCom agrees that they're willing to cover any shortfall with free cash if needed. And then transfers and other available are 3.1%, and that's where you get like funds from revolving funds. I'll scroll down so you can see what makes that up. This section here where we get $25,000 from a revenue for cemetery lots. Then we also get the RMLD earnings distribution, enterprise fund support, which is water, sewer, and stormwater pay for certain individuals, like the people who work on my team. They give a percentage of our pay because we process all of their payroll, we process all of their bills, and so the water, sewer, and stormwater pay some of our expenses, or a percentage of our expenses, and it kind of goes up. You'll notice it's up 4%. The budget is up 4%. It's kind of aligned with how much our budget goes up. It's mostly salary, but some expenses, because also we have postage and things that we mail out for them and all of that. The school revolving fund is $100,000. That's related to extended day. I think it's extended day in one of the other revolving funds. It's for facilities, it's for custodial staff. Facilities used to be on the school side, and so we never had a need for this, but when they brought facilities over to the town side, we have that need to move the revolving funds over in this way. We have some premiums that are reserved that are being brought in to help pay excluded debt, and then overlay surplus. Overlay surplus is us releasing overlay that we determined that we did not need. The Board of Assessors does that. So that's the revenues. Would you like me to pause there so we can talk about if there's any questions on the revenues, or would you like me to move on to accommodated cost?
I think pause is a good idea. Anybody? All right, moving right along.
Okay, so accommodated cost, well, we talked about shared cost, but the only difference really between accommodated cost and shared cost is that there's the out-of-district special ed included in accommodated cost, which is really the school side accommodated cost. But essentially, accommodated costs are going up 3.8%, 4.3% in the benefits area. The capital is going down by 4%. I think total is like I think it should be 5% total, but with this excluded debt, I think if I scroll down, it will give me a better percentage for you. Does it actually show? Well, it's 5% between debt and capital of our budget, but the increase year over year is not very clear here. Is it 0.1%? I guess it would be at 0.1%. Going back up. Energy costs are up 12.6%, and we talked about how we had to make some changes to the gas projection that we had there. We had knowledge that our contract was only going through May of next year, and that we would be seeing a very large increase, although we had no idea what it would be until we met with the consultant. So that was after we actually had presented accommodated costs, but we had put like a 12 or 15% increase in there, and then we had reduced it to help the school department with the full day K, knowing that that money that we put there would go to free cash. It really wasn't needed in fiscal 24. It was kind of just a buffer so that the next year wasn't going to look so harsh. But we are seeing probably a 33%, or I think it's 33% increase in fiscal 25 for gas, and it now all shows in fiscal 25 projections.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you when you said allocate that for free full day K and it's going back to cash. Can you just repeat, were you talking about the community priorities line?
No,
No.
we're talking about, so essentially, when we first did our projection of accommodated cost, we had energy up a higher percentage, largely because gas was going
Oh, that part, I remember that.
And then they had asked us, you know, we found some money in our budget, can you find another 100,000? And then we started scaling through, and the only places that we could find that we had this little excess was gas. And when you think about it, we only needed the increase for the last month of the year. I think it was May and June, the last 2 months of the year. And so the percentage that we had was high, but we were just trying to build up the base because we knew the next year we were gonna get pummeled with a high percentage. But in essence, we wouldn't have spent the money, it would have gone to free cash, so why not use it for the full day K? And that's why we brought it back to FinCom to say, okay, we increased this percentage knowing that this contract that we have is expiring, not knowing what it was gonna be at the time, so we used a very conservative high estimate. And then after that, we learned what the percentage was really gonna be. And then this request came in from the school department, can you find another 100? And so we made the option to come back to you guys and see how comfortable you were with that change. We don't typically make changes to accommodated cost. Typically, our process is to project our revenues, project our accommodated cost, and then we split the money between town and school. We tend not to change them, and if they do change, we tend to just use less free cash. Like if we find something as savings, we would tend to just use less free cash. In this instance, we went from a 3.75% budget to a 4% budget by allowing that to flow through that way, decrease that accommodated cost and give extra money to the school and town, because it ended up going 66% to the school and 34% to the town, that whatever I cut from the budget for that gas, and that got them that 100,000. I think they said it was about 130,000 they ended up getting as a result of making that change.
And that's separate from the community priorities line.
It's separate. So we had originally agreed
That's
that
what
every
I'm
year we
sure.
would try and put the 150 in there to help try and fund full day K. And I know it's a small amount, but it's just something we felt we could fit in there without too much fuss. And then we find other ways to try and help fund it. We also talked about at November town meeting, if new growth came in higher than budgeted, maybe we could use that money. Like, we've had a lot of conversations. We've really working hard with Susan and Tom over at the school department trying to come up with some solutions. But last year we got $1.6 million in new growth, and this year it was 962 or something. It went down. So we may not have that as an option. And so that, I think, we asked them to scour their budgets and see if they could find any cuts, and they were really working hard to do that too. So we're trying to partner with them and do what we can to get that done, because it is something I'd like to see happen for the residents. I don't want to see them pay the money that we've been charging in one of the few communities, so we're trying to do the best we can.
Yeah, so it's just going towards, at this point, it's just going towards tuition reduction for people who do pay, because it's just not enough.
Building their base up so that they can
Unless our
absorb all the
kindergarten
costs.
population continues to drop so much, then maybe we'll reach a point where we can, because it does keep going down.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've made great strides so far, and I feel like the request that they made, we brought it to FinCom to get your comfort level. It seemed like you guys understood why we were trying to do it. It's not something I'd like to make a habit of doing. I like things to kind of accommodate costs. They're budgeted, leave them alone unless we know something's happening that's gonna help the budget or hurt the budget. I don't really like changing them like that. I don't think it's a good practice to do, because we've kind of already split the money.
I actually just made that note about next year, that we should have a conversation about whether or not this is a good practice. I accept this was an unusual year and it's an important priority, but I think your point's well taken. It's a good conversation. Can I ask a question on the energy line? I just wanna make sure that the projected FY25 does contemplate that contract, that 11.8%.
I'm gonna show you the detail of the, so down here, you can see that, we had various, energy costs. Natural gas is only up 4%, but I think at the time we might have had 12 or 15% there, and now 33%. Now, the other thing is we've had some surplus on this line, as well in prior years. This number could have been in the prior year a little bit higher than it needed to be, so the 4% we felt would be enough. And then we're gonna get hit with probably another 33% come fiscal 25. So it is in fact there, if that helps.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I'll just add that part of the complexity is that as we're building the financial forecast, right, which is the first thing we build, right, and it's typically in September or October, right, we don't know exactly what these numbers are gonna be, right, so one example on the other side for FY '24 is the RMLD cost, right? We kept hearing, the rates are going to go up 22%, right? And we're like, luckily that increase was lower but we did not make a change there.
Thank you. Yep, Mark.
Sharon, do you happen to schedule the debt inside the levy, how that schedules out over time?
Yeah, it actually appears in the book, in the back here.
Folder,
Fold up.
which is nice on our eyes.
It's kind of tiny. I'm looking, I go, oh, wow, can I read this? So this debt schedule will show you the inside and the excluded. And we currently have, just three excluded debts, the high school, Wood End, and the library, all of which will be paid off by fiscal '25. So you'll notice that the excluded debt goes to 0, and we're expecting Killen to take its place. But if you see within levy limit, that's what we're talking about when we're
Yeah.
saying that 5% of the budget would be used for debt and capital. It's that piece of the debt, not the excluded, because the excluded is kind of added on top of your tax bill. Do you want me to continue?
Actually, I'm having trouble finding that. Can you just tell us
The very, very back page.
The second page of the foldouts.
Thank you.
Very large folded section in the back.
Capital improvement plan is the second one, and you can see all the debt.
There's another side.
I was in the wrong folder.
Oh, there's two foldouts.
Two foldouts.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I just went to
I
the
opened
first
right
big
up to the
folder.
red one.
We're doing great.
It was just on the report.
Appendix A.
I was listening to you and looking at the numbers. I'm like, these are not.
Oh, well, appendix A has it too. There's the debt schedule, but A has it on the second page. Capital improvement plan, listen, yeah, debt schedule's appendix B.
It's several pages. The front page gives you kind of a summary, but if you were to look at it shows you every debt that's out there and what the debt payment is, what the interest payment is. When it's paid off, if that's of interest.
Thank you so much. Oh, yeah.
Do you have a question?
No, I just,
Wanted to know where that,
Just really quickly, the miscellaneous, like snow's in there, right? Snow removal? I'm just curious, like what are we at this year? Like it's such a,
we still have a couple $100,000 available for snow and ice. I mean, it
I just
sometimes
jinxed
it's,
us for
sometimes,
next week, yeah.
sometimes it's just right up to the April town meeting whether or not we decide we need any
And then
money
we'd
there.
move it,
Yeah,
right,
and we
so-
move it at town meeting.
Okay.
But it is a line that you can actually go into deficit and raise on the recap if you didn't wanna do it that way. But we would need a vote of FinCom to do that. So right now, we're okay, but I don't know how much snow we're gonna get from now to April, so we may not be okay.
Yeah, no,
So-
I was just curious if we're.
I think we've had times where just prior to town meeting, we have FinCom meeting to add snow and ice to the mix or to increase the number or change the number. It's so hard to know.
In New England.
New England weather is just so unpredictable, so it's hard to know. But snow and ice is one of those things that the one thing to know about snow and ice is once you use a projection, so we use 675, we can't use less. So it's an area where you don't want to be overly aggressive because then you're taking funding away from something else that really needs it. And we can always add the funding later needed of any kind of deficit. So we do increase it periodically, but not by a lot because once you've increased it, every year you have to use at least that much as your budget.
Thanks.
Anything else? So I think we went through energy at 12.6. The financial is our, property and casualty insurance, veterans assistance, and that's where your FinCom reserve would be, and that's up 3.7%. The out of district special ed is up 4% in the school department. Spoke of all of that at length last time we met. And we have our vocational schools up 4%. Rubbish is up 3, but we're going to, isn't rubbish the one we're gonna see an increase in future years? What year was that gonna be?
2027, sorry.
Yeah, you see the I put like a 15% there as a placeholder just to remind me that something's happening there, but I don't know how much that's gonna be. But we have 3, and then that year that we are expecting our contract to go up, I've got a 15 there, so. When we know things, we try and plug it in to help ourselves when we're budgeting, but sometimes you just don't have any idea where this is gonna land. That could be a low number, that could be a high number, who knows? And And then, obviously we keep our snow and ice pretty level at, 675. And state assessments, you guys don't vote those, but we do show them because we do have to have the funding for them. They don't get voted at town meeting, that line doesn't get voted, that's just required for us to pay. Overall, 2.3 for miscellaneous. And this basically shows you the detail that makes it up, under energy, what lines make it up, so if you ever wonder what is this miscellaneous line, when you see this in the book, that's where you'd find it.
On line H1 in FY '25, we've seen a 34% increase in one of the vocational schools. Is that the building project?
That's the building project,
Okay.
so we added $200,000, which is what they're estimating our share of that would be. If we hear anything, get any update that number isn't sufficient, we will change it accordingly. So once we know, we keep updating it, but 200 is the estimate they've given us.
And once you pay it, it looks like it levels off, so there's a big
Levels off.
jump and then it levels
And then
off.
it stays, yeah.
How many years is that?
Depends on how long they decide to borrow for it.
Oh, they don't have the debt issuance.
They haven't issued debt yet, so we're not to my knowledge, I mean, if they have, I haven't heard about it. But when they issue debt, we'll get some official numbers and how long they're borrowing for. It could be 30 years, it could be 20 years, it's a big borrowing, so I would have to think
Huge.
they're gonna go with the max.
Minimum 30.
Yeah, minimum 30. And that was a monster project,
Oh, yeah.
so when they talked to us about it, I'm like, wow.
Massively expensive.
Our portion of it is very small given how many students we have there, but there are communities that's a big hardship for because they've got a lot of students that go there, so. The 200,000 we can manage, so.
Who does the actual debt issuance? Is it the actual school?
I believe so, yes, kind of similar to what we do. I'm not sure if they issue general obligation bonds, I would imagine they do, yeah.
I would hope we have relationships with the right people to just keep an eye on the interest rate environment, because when you are borrowing that much,
We use a bonding agent that helps us kind of decide about things about, okay, well, are we gonna ban this or permanently borrow because the interest market right now, we think it's high, we think it might be going down. People who work in this environment who are gonna give us some advice about what they think about when you're borrowing, if you should be doing a temporary borrowing because they think you can get a lower rate. But the other thing too is if we do a permanent borrowing and rates go down dramatically, there's a period of time where we can't refund, but then at some point we can. So with the high school in 2012, we did refund the debt at a lower rate and maybe even shorten the term. That was as I was coming in, so I don't know exactly all the details. But I do know that in 2012, many of our debts would end the high school were all refunded at a lower interest rate at a shorter term. So it's very possible to do that even if you borrow at a rate and you think it's a good rate and then they continue to decline. Sure. When that time frame, is up, that you can actually refund it. Hopefully the interest rate cooperates.
Jeffrey.
So along those lines, we have a great debt rating, but I'm guessing some of these other towns that are hit with much larger things might not have as good a debt rating, and the agencies that rate them might say, hey, you're getting this huge hit. So what rate does the VOTEC get?
I don't
How
know,
does
that's a
that
good
based
question,
on
I'm not even
the
sure.
community?
I wonder if they're AAA or if not, because that was a question we had, can't we just borrow for our share and just give you our share of the whole thing? And that's not how they were doing it, because we have a AAA bond rating and our borrowing would absolutely be, much better than what we would expect theirs to be, but I don't think they're AAA, but I can definitely get back to you on that. That's a good piece of information to know, because we're paying a portion of the interest and the principal and all of that, and if they're not a AAA, we may not be seeing great rates from that long. And the number they give us might be low. Because back when they gave us this number, interest rates were low.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting bad news, honestly. I'm gonna go with bad news, but we've left it there for now just so that we're reminded this is when we're expecting a jump of at least $200,000. Yep.
And I'm trying to remember, they're locking in that 200,000 based on our current enrollment with.
Enrollment, yeah. And if there was a
rolling average or
drastic
something.
change, that would change things as well. But historically, what we typically have for enrollment there for our Reading students.
So if our enrollment went up, our number would go up. So this is not a static number, it is year to year.
And which is why they didn't want to give us you can pay this.
Right, right.
You know, because it fluxes every year based on enrollment.
Huh.
So hopefully we won't see too much flux.
And the timing of
scary.
that is really just a little over a year away then? Or-
We put it there, I mean, with all building projects, it's really hard to say when they're gonna get borrowing or break ground. So we put it as close in, and I could move it out if they're not, you know, if they're not gonna be ready at that time. But we wanted, that was the earliest we could see that they might need us to pay that 200,000 based on their presentation.
Seeing anything else?
Wonderful. Stop this year.
Actually, if I could go back to the excluded debt, my recollection was there was a discussion a couple of years ago about how we did Wood End and Barrows inside the levy, and that was such a bad idea, and we really needed to do this 5% capital. So I'm a little puzzled. I would have said that we had Wood End and Barrows already all paid off. And
Sure.
and then I'm surprised to see them in both inside and outside the levy.
So Wood End might have both. I mean, there was several borrowings for Wood End.
And as the cost increases, they needed more.
I'm not really sure because I wasn't here at the time, but I did see that there were when they did the refunding, there was more than one Wood End borrowing that was being refunded. And it was excluded debt, I don't recall. And so if they did have issues in the past because they borrowed Barrows and Wood End for things, projects within them, with inside the levy, it probably is an example of why we do what we do, 5%, because when you put too much inside the levy, you make it impossible to do things like capital. I think that's what I heard a lot from Bob when I first started, was having done that, putting too much in the levy for debt inside the levy. They weren't able to do as much street work, and they didn't have very much money at all extra after all was said and done to do, to buy trucks and, and then they'd have all these high maintenance costs on these trucks that are aging because they just didn't have the funding. Having changed that to the 5% seems to have kind of righted the ship, I feel. We are able to keep up with a pretty robust capital plan and keep things moving.
But that was my recollection, it was all done inside the levy, and that was a bad thing. And then I see some of it is listed under excluded debt, you mentioned, but, Barrows and Wood End as well as the high
Let me
school
see if we can see on here. My vision is not the greatest, so let me see what I can read. Small print. Within the levy, is there anything that would, Rich, okay. That one is inside.
It's much smaller.
Yeah, so the second one was the excluded debt. Interesting. I don't think I ever recognized that one wasn't inside the levy. I knew that story was something I was told, was that they kind of bit off more that they could shoot with debt inside the levy, and it really closed out what they could do for several years. And you don't really want to limit yourself in that way.
My recollection was that when those projects got started much earlier than the high school, so I expected them to have been paid off before, and there it looks like they're wrapping up in about the same time frame.
I know that they were part of the refunding I saw when it came in 2012. So I don't know if they were different, maturities on both the borrowings, but they rolled them in and they're coming out in the next year. I think fiscal 25 is the last library payment. So this fiscal 24 is the last payment for the high school in Wood End. And then the last payment that you see for excluded debt, I think it's like $1.2 million, is the last payment for the library. So it really times out really nicely for us that Killam has been accepted by the MSBA, because we had these things falling off, and it's just gonna be less painful to take on that excluded debt.
Moving along.
Ready? All right. Matt, are you up? You want Minister of Clerk?
Administrative services, let's see.
Is he on? Oh, I see his picture.
Yes, we're coming on, okay. Okay, can everybody hear and see me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Matt.
Great. Hi. I think Jackie was gonna share the budget so we could all go through it. Are you able to do that, Jackie?
I could share it if she doesn't.
I think she's doing it.
She's
Yeah. Okay, great.
Page 29.
Yeah, so page 29 is where administrative services starts. I'll let you get there.
Okay.
Are we seeing it, or?
No, we're not seeing it yet.
Okay, I didn't see it.
You gotta share your screen, maybe.
Miss Jackie has doing it. She'll be right up.
Bug.
There it is.
Yeah,
She probably found the page first.
okay, yeah, that's great. Let's see.
Next page, Jackie, sorry. Page 29.
Yep.
Page 30 in the packet. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, page 29 is just some summary, some overview. Page 30 is where you'll start seeing some of the numbers. I think the main thing, I'll mostly open this up to questions, but the main change this year is the technology department is no longer in administrative services. It's its own department. So at the end of administrative services, I'll ask Kevin Perilla, who's our chief technology officer, to come on and talk and answer questions about the technology lines. But the remainder of administrative services is operations, human resources, the town manager's office, the town clerk, and elections. We have a modest 1.3% increase, as you can see there. A lot of the drivers were driving the budget down this year. We have fewer elections, and elections is always a big swing every year, if you remember. So that drove it down quite a bit. You could see 48.9% down. And also the funding for the pay and class distribution was in our budget last year in HR, and that's been dealt with at November town meeting, so that's no longer there. So it's a pretty flat budget. There's not asking for new positions or anything like that. And in fact, I'm losing positions because we are transferring those over to the technology budget. So I'm happy to answer questions overall or within the separate divisions that you may have. And then I will turn it over to Kevin, and then you'll see me back on for the public services budget because I've now taken over the public services department, and we'll answer those questions as well.
Okay, do you mind if we take a pause here and get a question?
Sure.
Great, go ahead,
Hi,
Marianne.
yeah, this is Mary Ann Downing. So I just have a question, maybe this is for Laura, under elections for fiscal year '24. Isn't that a presidential election year? And I'm just wondering why the budget is down. Or do the presidential elections fall more under the FY '25 budget?
I think there are fewer elections. I think we've gone down, there'll be 2 elections in FY '24.
Even
Trying to
with primaries
remember
and
one.
stuff?
Go ahead, is Laura there? Or?
I saw her on.
She's on
This is Laura.
Yeah.
So for the fiscal year '24, there'll be 2 elections, the presidential primary in March, and then the local election for this April is coming up. In the fiscal year '25 is when the presidential election will happen.
So that's when your budget will have to bump right back up.
Correct.
Okay.
And it looks historically on that line, there's a 50,000 swing every other year, so it looks like you're all well used to that swing.
Right, yeah, it does swing. We had talked about in the past try to make it some sort of accommodated cost, so it's out of this budget and somewhere else, but we haven't got around to doing that yet, so that's where it is.
That was it.
Okay,
In the, I just have a quick question. In the town manager's office line, how many FTEs are included that, or is it just the town manager?
that is, let me just see, town manager's office.
It's just up 19.8, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I believe that's just, in terms of wages, that's just the town manager.
Okay,
Expenses, it's others.
and that's all contractual, I assume?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yep, that is contractual. So.
Oh, we have
if
one
there's-
more question, Matt.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm, just keep on asking, because that's what I have, so. Go ahead.
Something that came up off the top of my head, combining our discussion a minute ago about future excluded debt and elections, are we projecting any additional elections depending on what decisions the town makes about, like, are we gonna have special elections for taking on
for
debt at some point?
Killen.
For
That's a
Killen,
really good point.
Or for, I mean, we've
Yeah.
heard it.
Combine them with our regular election.
Right, it's not, I mean, obviously we don't, these are the scheduled elections that we have so far. They could always be a special election for whatever reason. We try to combine things with elections that we already are having, but if it can't happen, then we'll have the election when we have it. And if we have to go back and ask for more funds for that at that time, we will. But this is what we're able to project, given the information we have today.
It's a really, really good question.
Thank you.
What's the cost of an election? Like 9 or 10,000?
Between 20 and 30.
Oh,
The presidential election is more like 40. So I should say between 20 and 40, depending on the election.
oh, wow. Okay. So there may be all sorts of reasons to do things differently, but it sounds like from a financial perspective, it's more affordable to combine elections.
For sure, I think.
It depends on what you mean by combined.
Well, turnout, you'd get better turnout too.
So for example, every presidential year, the April election is moved up to the March election. That does not save you money because it still has to be run as two separate elections with two separate sets of staff.
Okay.
The only thing it saves money on is the setup of the field house.
Okay, so that's minimal. I think the ones that are on our mind are debt exclusions. I think that's what you're referring to. That's the only ones I see on the radar. For a debt exclusion, could that be combined with an existing election and save money? Or is that like a presidential election where you need two different staffs?
You would need two separate staffs.
Well, if you combined it with a local election, right?
If you, well, it
think the
depends.
override was
Even if they're
combined with the election.
If you have two separate two elections with two ballots, it's gotta be handled separately. But if you do it on an April election and you add the question to the April ballot,
Like
then that's
2018.
one election.
Oh, okay.
Remember the override was the same as the town election?
That is what I'm remembering. Okay, that was really helpful, Laura. Thank you. I had no idea elections were that expensive. Glad I asked.
They are, for sure.
I don't have anything else on administrative services. Anybody else? And I don't see you anymore on the screen, but just, unmute and shout if you have something.
Will do.
Thank you. All right, Matt, that was awesome. Thank you. We're gonna hear about technology next.
Yes, so if you go to page 40, that'll start the technology budget, and Kevin will take it over for a while.
Page 41, Jackie.
Hello, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name's Kevin Ferrella. I'm the technology director for the town. That's what my current position is. I still report to Matt Cornelis. I've got to remember that. Just for now. Starting July, you won't. But yeah, much like what Matt said, this first page is really just a summary of what the department is, what we do, and the look of the proposed FY24 budget as far as like a summary. But then, like Jackie's displaying here, this is what it is, and I'd welcome any questions that you might have about it. I think that maybe just to get out ahead of some of the questions, there's a 20% increase in the permits and licensing software that might stand out to you folks, and that's because we identified a shortcoming in what our solution was for the people that are out in the field doing the inspections. The software that we have, or the solution that we have, requires an internet connection for the inspections to be done effectively, and for the low price of $7,259, we could do that inspection successfully without an internet connection. It was an add-on to the software. So that's the biggest jump here as far as percentage change, and I figured that might make it onto your radar, so I just get out ahead of that. But a lot of the other increases are just due to regular software cost increases, and in a lot of instances, they're just our best guesses based on past increases. And to illustrate how that's not an exact science, on the website and communications line, we guessed, and on March 1st, we were told by the vendor that we guessed incorrectly. It's actually going to be a little bit more. So, but usually percent increase for my stuff is due to just the ever increasing subscription costs, for lack of a better way to put it. So having said all that, are there any questions that aren't what I just talked about?
Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, it's just like a general question, like in terms of like network vulnerabilities or cyber, like all that likely stuff. Is that do you feel like that's pretty up to date? Or
No, I never feel like it's up to date. We're actually we're asking for some money at town meeting, but it's never ending. And if you see the new threats that are on the horizon, it's pretty troubling. My dad actually is into the AI stuff much more so than I am, and you can record your voice and have AI duplicate that recording. And so, I could leave a voicemail for somebody else asking for money, and those types of threats. So I guess to give a specific example, a grandmother could get a voicemail from their grandkid, their voice, saying, "Hey, I'm in a tough spot here. I need you to send me money." And so, as these threats evolve, the defenses to these threats have to evolve. And so, to answer your question, no, I'm not comfortable. It's just too fast changing, and I do feel that we are doing a good job, but short of disconnecting from the internet, I don't know that we can do a perfect job.
That's fair. I'll ask the question a different way. Is it a very high priority for you? Please say yes.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mark?
Are we using any firm or consulting firm to help with that? Testing vulnerability, and I don't think it should all fall on your lap, so.
Yeah, there's a number of things. We have outside vendors that it's just too broad a spectrum of solutions out there for one person or one. Our department is 5 people, so there's just too much to expect for in-house knowledge. So yeah, we do lean on vendors.
Is there a line item in the budget for that?
I guess a lot of it would either professional services, technical licenses and support contain some charges. The network hardware indirectly.
Could you talk, Kevin, about the dual factor authentication?
Yeah, so multi-factor authentication, we're engaged with the vendor right now for that solution. Without getting into too many details, we are addressing all of the typical cyber security vulnerabilities that a company or a town would have.
Thank you. That's really reassuring to hear. That's great.
It's not reassuring from where I sit, but thank you.
I have a question. Technology overtime, it looks like went up a lot in FY23 and is coming down a little bit. Can you speak to what is sort of causing those shifts in technology overtime?
Maybe it was the pandemic.
Okay, and what in a certain on a certain line or?
Yep.
17 versus 15, Kevin?
The overtime's going down.
What'd you say?
The overtime's
17?
going down 17 to 15, but
Oh.
the prior years it was like 7 or 9. So it seems like it went up and it's coming down a little. It's just
Budget too, so.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you said, I see what you mean now. Yeah, there's a project going on this year for something that required a spike in overtime across our department, and maybe I'm too protective of the details, but.
No. If it has anything to do with security, you be very protective. We just care about the budget.
Yeah, but it was a one-time increase. The need is not as great next year.
Okay. Do you see it coming back to pre-$17,000 levels to like the 7 or 9,000, or do you think it'll level out at 15?
My expectation is that it will decrease.
Okay, so it might even come down a little. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then since we're on that, the idea of current levels decreasing, the first line, the landlines and wireless phones, my expectation is that will decrease too. We made some changes this fiscal year with our fiber network that has gotten us out of the business of leasing some lines and owning the lines. And some efficiencies gained with our actual landlines during the next fiscal year should have that decrease too. So not to spoil next year's FinCom meeting, but I would anticipate that would also come down.
Thank you. It's great news. Anybody else on technology? Thank you so much. It was a great presentation.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Back to Matt.
Okay. I'm back, so public services, okay, and it's up, page 42. So public services, it's a new department to me. This was the department that Jean Delios ran so well for many years, and she did have a lot of input into this budget. So it still consists of the same nothing's coming out of it. So we have administration, community services, and community development. And just to be clear, community services covers elder and human services, recreation and veteran services, and community development covers planning, economic development, inspections, conservations, and historic. And in this budget, if you look at it, it's actually going down by 1.5%. The drivers there is that, as I mentioned, I'm running this department as well as administrative services, so my salary is now split between two departments. So there's a substantial decrease in public services in the salary wages line item because of that. You'll see some increases, though, in community services, mostly programming that we've done and increasing staff hours around the Pleasant Street Center, some increases in veteran services. And then as far as community development goes, there's a slight increase there, but that budget pretty much has remained unchanged. So those are the highlights. I could walk you through every division if you'd like to do that, or just answer some general questions.
The increase in services you were just speaking to, so there's 3 grids. There's the budget summary, public wages, public services expenses. Where we would see that bump up in programming predominantly for the senior center, that's the community services line that's up 26.7%, right?
Exactly,
Okay,
right.
perfect. Thank you.
Yep, community services.
Any questions? Oh, Mary Ann has one.
Hi, yeah, building on the community services and the increase in elder programming, so that I'm seeing like a 70K increase, and there was actually a pretty big increase from 22 to 23 and smaller from 23 to 24. Elder services also got a significant amount of ARPA money, and I don't know how much they're putting aside towards possible development of a new senior center. I think we had said 300K, but we don't really control that. But I guess you have a time limit on spending the ARPA money, and I'm just wondering how much of that are you using towards community service? I know they were trying to create a 25K, like a basis budget to have that there. And then the other part of my question, and I've actually never really seen this, maybe I have to watch COA meetings, is how many users do you project an increase in users? How many seniors are using the senior center per month on average? And I've just wondered about that because I don't know whether we're projecting more with a new senior center. We, on the RAC, when we gave ARPA money, we assumed it would just be money that would go a few years, but we really didn't have a sense as compared to, say, the Y, or something about how many users are benefiting from this.
I'll take a
I
stab at that.
know that on page 49, we have a listing of total enrollment interactions at the senior center. And so that might answer some of that question, but I'll defer to Fidel as well.
So it is interactions the same, hold on, I'm looking, because it could be the same person going multiple times,
Yeah,
right?
we track that. So the essentially every month, Chris, who is our administrator, has a report that shows unique visits and total visits.
Okay, that's
That
what I'm
is-
curious, unique versus total, because
Yeah,
I'd say,
yeah.
I don't think 11,000 people in town are using this
Yeah, yeah.
senior center.
And that's reported to the COA on a monthly basis, so they see that report.
So
I will-
COA report.
I will share that the latest report with FinCom. I will say that we are seeing a very nice increase in membership, if you will. In fact, this February was the highest February since 2012, which I'm not sure what was going on for February 2012, but it is coming up, and it is certainly higher than pre-pandemic years now at this point. I don't think that we've gotten to a point where we're projecting enrollment, right, with regards to like future spaces, and we've had this conversation with Recalc and COA, and it would be really hard for us to do that.
Yeah, because then that you'd know what size senior center you need if you knew the number of people that were coming to it.
Sure. So I've asked this question to ethnographers, right? Because as you saw, as part of the Killer School process, we had I want to say 20-year enrollment projection, right? And school projection is a science, and it's not all the time. I haven't found yet anyone that can help me project enrollment for a senior center, because it fluctuates and depends on a lot of things. So also say that we have no idea what enrollment would be in the future, and so far I haven't figured out a way to find that number. On your point on the ARPA funds, so we are trying our best to spend the allocation that was for programming.
Because it was 600K, it's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money, and what I've shared with the select board is that what we're finding is that a lot of the additional spaces, and the additional things that we thought we needed are coming at no cost right now. So one example is Wellness Wednesdays at the library, which is not really coming at a cost to us. Yeah. So I think, to answer your question, are we fully going to spend this allotment in FY24? I will say that we are going to spend ARPA first, but we also wanted to be proactive and avoid the cliff, right? So slowly build up our budget, knowing that ARPA is going to go away at some point. When ARPA goes away, we don't want to see an increase of whatever dollars it is at that point.
So what is that monthly usage again of unique people that use the senior
I'll
center?
send it to you.
Okay, yeah. I was
I'll
just-
find it in my email.
Would you send it to the entire committee?
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up on that. I think I know the answer to this, but if there were a scenario where ARPA funds were dedicated for a certain cause, and to your point, you couldn't spend the money or the expenses were way less, you will go back to the select board and get a reallocation.
100%.
We are going to use all the money.
We are going to use all the money
Thank you.
for water and sewer.
I just don't want to hear that any money went back. We got the money, we want to use the money. Okay, yes.
A couple questions on my end, thanks. Matt, this is going to be kind of a stated question, not just for you, but for everybody. Are there any changes to FTEs within within this proposed budget?
Well, in terms of public services, I know that we have converted a couple of part-time employees to full-time. I don't think we've increased the number of full-time employees, but we have made part-time employees full-time employees, mostly at the senior center. I think there's 2 of them down there. Aside from that, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And then how many sorry, Phil, how many FTEs total are, as part of it, as part of the department?
If you go, Jackie, to page 28 of your packet, that
Was it in there?
has.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was in there enough, so I thought it might be, I just couldn't find it.
So it's page 28, and it's got a summary of FTEs by department.
Son of a.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
There it is, there. So, yeah.
27, but yeah.
You'll see, yeah, 28
on the
Yeah, it's in the video.
Awesome. Thank you. That's perfect on that. Thank you. I knew it was gonna be in there somewhere. I recall seeing it divided out, but you've changed it to format and it's better. So thank you for that. I think maybe following on to Jean's question, one other part, are there certain things within your budget, and it's not just necessarily, it's more grant related, but has there, been tangible impacts to what you have in your budget that have been grant or ARP funded that's, that you can kind of speak to that's been, okay, well, we were able to kind of take this specific line item out of the budget. And that'll be not just for this, but I think that's a similar question that we'd probably like to know across departments. Is there something that we're funding by grants or by ARPA, and where we could, kind of highlight that?
We are funding several programs with the ARPA money. Grant money is in there every year. I could ask, I think Jenna is on the call as well, who's oversees more directly the senior center. If you have questions there, I could ask her to maybe answer some of those questions in terms of the programming and what's funded by which particular grant. We can turn it over to her if she's there.
Jenna, are you with us?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
thank
I'm
you.
here.
Hey, Jenna.
Hi there. Would you mind asking the specific question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be very specific, but just my question is, as it related to, and whether it's, kind of within the senior center or other places within this budget, kind of at a top line, things that are grant funded or ARPA funded, and, kind of where we would see that, kind of within this budget in case something went away, from a grant perspective, and just have some visibility to that.
Sure. So right now, the positions that I know that are going to be partially funded by ARPA, one of them is in relation to the senior center, and it's our senior coordinator, and moving that job from part-time to full-time is ARPA funded, as well as the recreation program coordinator, I believe. And then, like Matt alluded to, a lot of the ARPA funding is being used for programming specific things. Also in ARPA, it was outlined in all of the meetings as well, we're hoping to hire that volunteer coordinator position. So that we haven't hired yet, but we're hoping to use half of that to hire someone part-time, probably within the next couple months or so, and then next year using the other half for that volunteer position. So we're just going to figure out how many hours we may need and what the funding looks like for that.
That's terrific. Thanks, Jenna, so much. That's exactly what I was looking for. I really appreciate it. So Fidel, if that was in here somewhere, I already apologize for not catching it, but it's better to hear from Jenna anyways.
Absolutely.
Always.
Great.
And
Me too.
sort of a follow-up to that, I assume as you're building budgets FY '25 and forward, you're recognizing that grant funding goes away and you have to build that into your baseline, right? Okay, as long as.
So is that on page 46, Fidel? Like you can see it as a separate line item in two spots?
Support is usually shown, yeah.
So it's a separate line item, so is they,
Yeah, we
As they
budget the
drop
whole,
off.
yeah, we budget them 100% on the line that they're
Yeah.
supposed to be, and then there's a negative line for support, and then that support line goes away, so that we're aware always what
so some of that is ARPA, it's grants and ARPA there?
For community services, yes. That is the only area where we are using ARPA for. I just want to share, to answer Mary Ann's question. So in February of 2023, we had 532 people, unique individuals, visit the senior center in that 1 month. And then we had a total of 2,166 visits that is not unique, and just in that month.
Thank you. All right. Anything more on this one?
No, it just occurred to me, unrelated to this, but if you had a lot of visits in February, maybe it's because mostly it's been such a mild weather. Why is the seniors are willing to come out? I'd be curious about the 2012 weather. If it was a mild winter. Is that,
That actually
I know my
really-
elder parents do not want to go out at all when it's icy. And I'm sure elderly are here the same way. Side note, not a real budget question. No, but it's really related.
Might be.
Good weather gets them out.
Is it time to move on to finance? Is everybody ready for that?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to the team for all your help
Thanks,
as
Matt.
well.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jackie, I'm on page 64. It says 64 at the bottom of the page. There we are.
I was just literally doing that.
So the finance department is made up of
8.3.
The finance department is made up of all non-union staff, and so they were part of the pay and class study. You did see at November town meeting, we asked for a little additional funding to address the non-management staff that was being addressed or highlighted by the consultant as needing an adjustment. In this budget, you're going to see that we're moving to a different chart, a chart that has different steps for management and non-management. So we go from a 2% step to a 2.3% step. We're trying to kind of match up with what the consultant is looking for in terms of what our peers are paying and what we're paying, and try and get to a different space. And then the range was much larger for the management staff, so the steps go to 2.5%. So in this particular budget, the non-management staff is getting a 3.6% increase, and the managers are getting a 3.75. I mention that just because it's a change from prior years. The other thing that you'll notice in here is that the finance budget is going up 4.6%, and the majority of it is in wages. And so there are two positions within finance, mine particularly, and another management position that were being highlighted. So we're going to be above what we would have normally received because we're getting an adjustment in there. All other increases within the finance department are pretty small. I mean, I had scaled back some of my professional development to allow for some one-time costs for assessing in the prior year, just so we didn't have to ask for extra money. And so I added that back with another couple hundred because everything seems to be costing us more. And just really office supplies and professional development for expenses. Our expenses are only up 2.2%. So the majority of what you see here of that 4.6% is largely salary related. All the staff is non-union, so the majority of them were addressed in November, but as I said, two management positions within the department are being addressed in this budget. Any questions?
And I don't think the committee has any questions. We good to move on?
Can't see him. Doesn't look like he's got his.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, you guys just caught
Sure,
up.
why not?
Half an hour of time.
I'm very concise.
Thank you.
Oh, I think I was on the way over, so.
Trust you with listening.
So we will go to the library, which is like 105 and 6. Thanks, Jackie.
Sorry, what was the number again?
105.
Oh, okay, thank you.
On the PDF on my phone. Which is magic. Yeah, so there we are, Reading Public Library. Everything is essentially the same from the presentation in November to the select board, with the addition actually of $10,000 to, thank you to Fidel and Sharon for finding that, to our expenses, which allowed us not to cut quite as much as we needed to. But the primary drivers are our salaries, and they account for 81% of our budget. And that is, like every other department here, primarily driven by the pay and class study that we did.
there's really nothing major one way or the other from where I sit, but that does not mean that you all don't have questions for me, so I'll see what there are for questions. Would you like me to go over anything in specific? Yes.
I'm just
Oh,
asking
yeah,
you. So I asked this question last year and I'm gonna ask it this year now that I see the pay and class study, and this isn't targeting the Director of Equity and Social Justice, but how did you do a pay and class study for that position, given that, to my knowledge, no other libraries have an Equity and Social Justice Director? So
That
what
was
were you
done-
comparing that
It
to?
wasn't asked through the library, it was through Directors of Equity and Social Justice.
But those kind of positions in other places, like that report to mayors, have very different duties, right?
Well, no, not necessarily, it depends on it depends on the town and it depends on the thing. The fact that it's housed in the library is just a budgetary thing, so it doesn't change the actual duties, so. So if you were to look at Danvers, or if you look at other communities, if you go to the bigger cities, yes, I'm sure that it does, because cities have different structure than town manager, select.
Yeah, I guess I see, she seems to be doing a great job with library-focused activities, but hasn't gotten as involved in the community, or I'm not having visibility. Like, for example, in the high school, a few weeks ago, there was an incident with a racial epithet written on the wall. I don't know, I was thinking, and they had an assembly this week. My kids were going to assemblies about it, run by students, and I'm thinking this would be a perfect thing for Sudeshna to be involved in.
She was?
She was?
She was involved.
Okay, so that's good to know that she's involved, because that's what you hope, we have that there, and when the swastika incidents came up before and they had assemblies,
The one thing that's wonderful about a position like this is that it is not about the person that is there to solve the problem. The person is there to help the youths and the Milwaukee's and the Malteses, to empower them and help them and advise them to actually solve the problem. So we don't rely on the one person to solve the problem. We embrace it as a community.
yeah, I mean, just to figure out what they were gonna do, because maybe it was just the perception from my kids that it was like kids were solving it, because they had a presentation.
And that may be well the case. That may be what's needed in that situation, so.
Okay, and my other question is completely unrelated, and it's something I've always wondered, and I looked back in budgets. I see that, maybe it was like last year's budget, it was mentioned, this programming budget is supplementing what we get from the Friends of the Reading Public Library. And I don't really have visibility to, does the Friends of the Public Library just give money directly to providers? Like when you say
Yes, but
this
no,
was,
this is not.
it never flows through the library budget? So who approves that spending? Is it the Board of Library Trustees? Like, are the Friends just, like, how does the Friends know, we need money to pay for this program?
We put it in they give us a budget, so they're like us, like the town or like any other nonprofit. They have a process by which they raise money instead of taxes. They do bake sales, they ask for donations and things like that. And then they set a budget that says of the money that we have available, we'll give, we're gonna budget so much and such for concerts, so much for children, so much for adult programming, so much for teen programming. And then our staff who work through our pillars and programming pillars and our frameworks, and our, based on our core values, strategic plan and mission, they develop the programs and then they request the funds from the Friends.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, are you spending a lot more on programs than we see here because you're getting money from the Friends? Like I see 4,000 here, but are you really saying if it weren't for the Friends, we would need 15,000 from you guys or something?
We would probably need 30 or 40,000.
Okay, so that's how much you're getting. All right. And I don't see, looking back in the budgets, the Reading Public Library Foundation, is that just something different? Do they do the same thing as the Friends?
They do something different. They are more based, the foundation was formed 25 years ago and was meant for larger and have been for larger, sort of more one-off things. So program is, you're gonna have, anywhere from 300 to 700 programs per year. But you're only going to install a computer lab in 1990. whole thing one time.
So it's like a capital, not quite like a capital
It
project,
is.
it's like that kind of
It is
stuff?
specifically formed, like, for example, they don't give money for salaries and they don't give money for materials because that is the town's obligation.
Okay.
So yes, in general, they're larger expenses.
Yeah, because it just feels like this programming, maybe I started with the Friends and I said, why don't I just ask about the foundation? Because this did not seem like enough to match the number of programs I see you guys running.
Not at all. But it also alleviates, you know, by having a backup fund. In a bad year, if fundraising doesn't go well, then we at least have kind of like what you're talking about with the senior center, right? You're trying to establish a baseline of at least we can do this. And at least we can provide something in the event that we don't get a grant, in the event that we don't have external donations.
So those, just the Friends isn't listed as grants like other town departments because it's,
No.
okay. Thank you. That was just answered because I didn't know whether it should have been counted like a grant.
Well, I don't know, like, yeah, no, it doesn't, but I'm curious, like, do the ref funds for the schools, are those listed as grants?
No, but the schools get some grants from this, they get it from the state, they get it as grants.
Right, okay, but I didn't know, like.
But not private.
The Reading Education Foundation calls them grants, I think.
Like,
So I-
yeah, so
I don't
maybe
know if
not
that's what it
private
is.
private grants are different than public grants, maybe that's what appears in a budget.
Yep.
I guess, okay,
Okay.
thank you, that's all.
So that would be a private grant then.
I think it's an interesting philosophical question, though. I think you're bringing up something good on both the library and the town side. Is like, it's for informational purposes, it's nothing we vote on, it's nothing we discuss. But if the public wants a full view of the revenue on both the schools and library side, it's an interesting idea to just put in the narrative.
I guess it's just be a full view of what the public thinks the library needs to run, because some people say, oh, it's just this $2 million budget, and look, they can run all these programs with that budget, they don't need more, and then you have to say, no, they're really running these programs with that budget plus this private supplement.
And if I were to draw a comparison with the schools, I think, I believe, I'm getting a little, no one in the school department's here, but I believe PTOs fund field trips.
We do.
And like, just to your point, the public perceives that the schools are covering that cost and may not realize that there's private fundraising supporting field trips.
Yeah.
So I think there could be a community service argument.
I'm just saying, now you're gonna get, and there's the football booster club, and there's no, I'm not making fun of your point is right. Just to point out that we filed a document with the state called the annual financial report and application for state aid. And that document has all of our income and all of our expenses and by category. Make sure that we meet our municipal appropriations requirement, which means that you all have voted to give us a certain amount of money. We have a mandatory requirement that the town provides a certain amount of money each year and an increase over each year. It's based on a 3-year average. So that document and that information, it also includes, I bugging Joe Huggins because we need to say, what other services do we get from the town, right? So we get employee benefits from the town that doesn't come out of the library budget. Our custodians don't come out of the library budget. Our electricity doesn't come out of the library budget. So, you know, there I am getting from Jan over at facilities because then we add all of that in and you do get a better true cost of what it costs to run the building and the grounds. I mean, you know, so there is a lot that goes into that. And then that number is, you know, ends up being sort of a, what do you call it, sort of an aggregate. Obviously during 2020 and 2021, we didn't have a lot of income from the Friends or Foundation because we just were kind of hold tight with, we use some, but not nearly as much as we do when we have active programming.
It's interesting because the schools have to do all that with the state, but that's all part of something that's recorded that you see. I never realized until you said this that the library has a full report.
Has to do that, yeah.
So there's a whole other financial picture beyond this for the library, I guess.
I mean, I'll be honest, it's nowhere near the scope and scale of
Oh, yeah.
public schools. Just to be fair, you know, it is, you know, as we always say, it's sort of the same size as our rubbish and recycling, although maybe it'll be less than the original rubbish and recycling. But, you know, so it is a modest budget considering what it does, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Jeffrey?
So library materials is predominantly, I would guess, books, but what about things like I mean, Canopy and Hoopla.
All of that is library
Newspaper
materials.
subscriptions.
Yep.
All of those, so those subscriptions are under library materials and not under software license.
No. If it actually has content that we use, that we have to license for that, that's what a software license is more like our catalog and, the service we use for online managing your rooms and booking appointments and all that other stuff. So that's the, kind of the nitty gritty of doing that.
Do you have a sense of, or can you give me a ballpark of how much are actual paper books versus how much are?
Physical versus digital, it's something that we track. It's probably at about 35% digital. I mean, we're trying, it's been growing every year. We still spend a really decent amount. I will say, and I've said this before, that the town of Reading is incredibly, we have one of the highest, we have the highest circulation per capita of not only physical items, we have a lot of digital use too. People here read. Many other libraries have already ditched all of their audiobooks. We actually still have a lot of people that check out our audiobooks, so we're not gonna get rid of them until there's, certain, we did have VHS tapes at one point and cassette tapes at one point. So we did deaccession those slowly over a period of time. But it really is in response to what we see. The hardest part is obviously we do have an increase in our digital services, so we're trying to expand that as well as keep up with our print or physical materials. So that's a little bit of a balancing act. I would say electronic and virtual collections are more interesting to manage because it's usually all or nothing. You're like, here's a large amount of money for a license, and then we're like, well, maybe is it worth the license? So it's a little more complex. And then the other thing is that we have to deal with a lot of third-party privacy information. So we will not deal with a vendor if there are vendors out there that have content and they will try to sell it to us, or have us license it, but we want to be very careful that any third-party vendor's not taking your information and then selling it to somebody else. So we do try to, we and Noble, who's our consortium, have very specific standards when it comes to licensing content.
I thank you for guarding my privacy.
I'm guarding your books.
Anything else on the library?
Questions about the budget, Ed?
Nothing from you, but Amy, as usual, just so informative. I love hearing you speak, so thanks so much for giving us the time.
Okay, I will end at 8 minutes early and maybe Jean will get her wish.
No, we're cruising along though, can't complain.
Thank you. Mr. Huggins.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Joe.
Bye, Joe.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. I'm having a little difficulty here. Hang on. Okay, good. We're on page 111. Thank you for having me tonight. So we just get this first slide here just gives you an overall department overview. What we're going to be talking about tonight is the core facilities budget and the town facilities budget. Also under the facilities department is the school facilities, which is voted under the actual school committee budget that we do all custodial services for all 8 school buildings. And again, that's a separate budget. We listed below the big thing we do in facilities obviously is maintain all the physical plant of all the buildings, of all 17 locations. And we just gave you a quick snapshot of some of the activities that go into doing a preventive maintenance program. I mean, I can go back to that. It's probably kind of boring to you folks, but we like it. This slide right here shows you that the total facilities budget is up. We're requesting 9.4%. Wages at 3.2% increase. Just to be clear, there are no adds to staff in the facilities department or the town facilities budget. We have 7 full-time employees in the core, and we have 4 full-time employees on the town facilities side, which is custodial. The expense budget is up 11.5%. I can go, the next slide, we can go through more detail and I'll outline where the increases are coming from. Okay, Jack. So if you go down to, on the first slide under the wages, up the top, you're gonna see that we're asking for an increase in overtime. The reason for that is the increased hourly rates for the union staff, as well as there's a lot of non-billable events that the town core facilities staff handles across town that is not billable through the school's rentals or anything like that. So we're asking for an increase there. If you go under the expense lines, there's a 12.3% increase in the energy budget, which we'll cover in the next slide. The elevator expenses have gone up 20%, and that's due to state mandated inspections, an increase in those inspection requirements across the board for the schools and the town buildings that have elevators. The alarm expenses, again, that's a $50,000 increase right there. It jumps off the page a little bit, but that's because over the past couple of years, we've added new security systems to all school and town buildings, which prior to this was a fraction of the size of what we have now and much less complex. We're under a contract right now with a security company to do regularly scheduled preventive maintenance on all the systems across the board, system health checks, software updates, regular scheduled intervals where they come in and check out all of the equipment. So that's what that represents right there. And that was bid out under combis through our procurement officer. Also, under pest management, we've seen a spike in, activity across town, which is the reason why that line went up for core pest management services. So overall, it's a 12% increase. Let me go to the next slide, Jack.
Do you mind if we pause for a question, Joe?
Sure, go right ahead.
Go ahead.
So Joe, what's the, like that COVID expenses, like that 54,000? What is that's not the opera
That's
money,
really,
or
that's
is
kind of a carryover from before when we had the COVID money in the budget. It's probably could be taken out of there. It's miscellaneous core expenses. That could be anything like miscellaneous supplies to maintain the buildings and things like that. But we needed a place to have it when we were going through the pandemic, just to answer your question.
Okay, but
So that can probably be removed as far as, the COVID expense part of it.
But that's not like whatever the 250 that was put aside for COVID from opera, that's totally separate, that's just a place, okay,
It's Board of Health, I think.
okay.
And Joe, I have a question too. I don't think you can speak to the security alarm situation, but is it safe to say that increase in $50,000, what we get for that increase is safer buildings? That's a safe way to think of it, right?
Yes. What that number represents right there, I just want to be clear, is the preventive maintenance on the systems across town. So in order to maintain equipment that runs properly, we need to have people that are qualified to work on it, come in and work on it. What's not included in that would come under if there was repairs to be made. That's above and beyond that. Like if we had a camera that went down or a card reader, for instance. But to answer your question, yes, that's the key to a good program is to maintain the equipment, just like everything else.
Thank you. Mary Ann has a question too.
Under the pest management expenses, the increase, is that tied, if you were to guess, to a lot of the development and digging up happening downtown? I know people back when they built the Met, friends of mine who were neighbors to it would complain they saw more rats because that was a very big project and stuff was being dug up. But I don't know if you can speak to, you think that's the reason, or the pests are, say it's rats, and I'm just guessing, that kind of stuff, that it's located near development?
It's spread across town at different buildings, the increases in the occurrences that we're seeing. We do work closely with the health department, the director of public health, and we've done a lot of things to mitigate and to get things under control, if you will, from a rodent standpoint, if you will.
But yeah, I would say that it's related to construction in a lot of cases. You do see spikes in it when certain activities are going on. But we're required to have an integrated pest management program in place for the schools primarily. So we have this contract in place either way, but what we do is we extend it out to the town buildings also. So it's town-wide, but the IPM is something that we have to maintain for the schools also.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this slide?
I don't think so.
Okay, Jack, we can move. So like Fidel said, the electricity, RMLD, there's been a rate increase. You can see there's a 20% increase in school building electricity and town building electricity. And then for this year, for 24, we're requesting a 4% increase, which will cover 2 months of the year. And then going into the following year, we are going to see an increase. Right now, we're paying $4.62 per decatherm for natural gas. With this new contract, it's going to go up to $6.61, which I believe is like a 33% increase. Other municipalities that are not in a contract, like the town of Reading has entered into, are paying north of $10 a decatherm in some cases. So it's going to be a big increase down the road, but clearly not as big as it could be. And it's a 3-year contract once we go into this. So we do our very best to maintain, maintain the equipment and good running equipment and scheduling through the energy management system, to run the buildings at optimal times. There's a lot of activity in the schools, does keep the consumption down, so we try to keep this energy budget with the tight lid. Our assistant director does a great job, Kevin Gabuzzi, of really monitoring everything on a daily basis over there. And the same goes true with water and sewer. There's a 4.8% increase in that for an overall total energy increase of 12.3%. Any questions on that?
Jeffrey?
So I don't know, Jeff, it's you or Sharon, but the percent change in energy electricity expenses is 20% in your spreadsheet, but it's 21.3 in the master overall
I was thinking the same thing.
spreadsheet.
Does not
So
look like the number I have.
somebody's off by $10,000 in the FY23.
It was probably me, sorry, Sharon. I'm sure we can fix that.
Yeah, we'll figure out which one of us is right.
Do you mind taking that as a to-do?
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have it at 21.3, he's got 20%.
The FY23 is 900K versus 890 on the other spreadsheet.
Okay.
That's the 10,000.
Oh, the 890 is, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's a different number there. It has something to do with that
It
$10,000.
could be, yeah.
That conservation electric probably.
But the 12,000 is included, the 1080 number is the same.
Interesting.
Yeah, so somebody's summation in Excel didn't cover the same
Same
number
thing,
of
yeah.
columns, right?
It's probably just adjusting the charts. I'm thinking the conservation, that conservation of electric, that 10,000 is maybe not included in this total here, but it is. I think that might have something to do with it, because you're going from 900,000, I have 890 on mine, so.
But the 1080 lines up exactly, so the $12,000 conservation is included in both.
Yep,
So,
interesting. We'll make a modification.
Thank you. I think you can keep going, Joe.
So this is this last slide here is the budget we talked about at the beginning, which is the town facilities budget, which makes up the 4 custodians, the outsourced cleaning, as well as the cleaning supplies associated with
cleaning the buildings, and a small amount of money in there for building supplies. The wages are down 2.6%, even though there was an increase in contractual wages. There is no vacation buyback this year because of the retirements. We had it in there last year, so that's why there's a decrease of 2.6%. The outsourced cleaning, building supplies, and other expenses are all level funded. We're in the second year of a competitively bid contract for cleaning of the 4 town buildings. And that's all I have for you.
Is the, it's a tiny, I imagine it's a very tiny collective bargaining unit, but I'm curious to know if vacation buyback continues to be something that's in the contract, or is that something that's being phased out with time?
So the only vacation buyback that exists in townwide is for retirees. So it essentially is an option that if you tell us 6 months ahead of time, of 6 months ahead of the time that you will retire, then the town will pay out your vacation accrued, not accrued, all your vacation due that year.
So you only get it if you give 6 months notice?
And if you're retiring.
And if you're retiring.
If you are leaving the town, if you're not retiring, you do not get it. It's only for retirees.
So it provides some nice stability for hiring and transition?
Exactly.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah. And you know, the last thing I'll say is we, when it really hurts is when it is employees that are really high pay scale, which is the case this year in particular in police, because a few with a higher pay scale folks are retiring, and you know, a few of them spent 32 years with the town, you know, a long time with the town, and yep.
Thank you. Anything else for Joe? Thanks very much, Joe.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Are we on our last public works, right? I was just about to call it cost center. This is showing my old
Jane Kinsella?
Committee stuff.
Yeah, it's not a cost center. Department, our next department. We have Jane with us?
We do.
Wonderful. Hi, Jane. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Let me find stats on page 86, Jackie. Yeah, okay, great. I did want to just do a shout out for Chris Cole, who's joining us tonight too, the Assistant Director. So the Department of Public Works, let me just start out that there was no changes in FTEs. Remains the same throughout General Fund and Enterprise Fund. The department went up 3.3%, the general fund. Snow and ice, as you can see, 2.3. A lot of that is, you know, contractual with the Republic Services in Cobanta. And you can move that down, I think, Jack. Wages, you can see a jump with administration. Those are all non-union employees. So they were evaluated through the pay and class study. So they see a bigger jump there than you would with any of the contractual, the other 3 unions, engineering, supervisory, and the larger DPW union are all contractual. So you'll see a smaller increase this year, which is not normally what you see, right? And on expenses, we went up 4.8%, and I can kind of go through some of those with you. Let's see, under administration, big one was supplies, and engineering looks like it went down, but it's because we actually, you know, had money that went in last year for design into their budget, which is not in there this year. So that 40,000 or whatever it was, yeah. 30,000 came out. Highway equipment, somebody had asked a question related to the line painting. That's that has been just a huge increase, 24% year over year with the same bid prices. So we're just seeing big increases in certain areas. Under the engineering budget, the increase was related, although you don't see it there, to traffic controls and parts for that type of stuff, parts and labor for that we have to outsource. In highway, there's the line painting, that fuel falls under that budget also, so that went up from 165 to 190,000. So, and if you remember last year, you know, I just circle back with you at the end of the year because our budget just couldn't sustain the increase. Let's see, under stormwater, that was just level funded. There was nothing there. Forestry went up a little bit. We're trying to attack some of the ash trees throughout town. This year we were able to take down 13 of them. Most time we do that with our own guys, but occasionally, depending on where it is or how, you know, we may have to outsource it. So I added a couple of thousand to that budget in case we need to do that, because we do have to start removing more and more of those because they're becoming hazardous. And the parks and cemetery, I put some money in there because for grave restorations, we had hired somebody at Laurel Hill this past year to do some work for just short money, and he did a fantastic job. I didn't have necessarily the money in the budget. I hadn't planned it, but I thought, well, let's just see how he does. And I think it was like 4,000 or 5,000. Did a wonderful job. So I thought, let's start doing this on a more regular basis because that particular cemetery, you know, needs an awful lot of help. I am looking for grants for that. I just have not been able to find one for that particular type of work, but I'm still looking. The other type of things that falls under parks and cemeteries, we've changed the type of clay that we use in some of the fields. We've got a request to do that, so that's couple of $1,000s more. We also had a huge increase in fertilizer, so for some reason people are charging a lot more for that, so we added a couple of $1,000s for that. And I think that's it. So it just adds up because it's 2,000 or 3,000 here, 2,000 or 3,000 there. But those are the main areas that you'll see it in. And I think next.
Can I pause for, Joe has a question.
Yeah, just quickly, is like the town forest work, right? Like, you know, in terms of like, getting rid of like the red pine trees and all that good stuff. Is that in your forestry budget, or is that coming from opera still?
Yeah, it comes out of now I think the select board funds them and conservation and trails and historical. But that money actually was a separate ask from ARPA. In the prior year, they asked for it at town meeting. So because that's 20, 30 plus thousand, you know, or more. So, and then now they're doing invasive management. So that's like part B of that. So their budget of, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 would not be able to do that type of work. But they did fall under me up until last year. But the funding of that type of stuff was always outside of that budget.
Okay, thank you.
So on this page, the streetlight electricity is flat at 105, whereas before we had, in all of the other ones, we saw, you know, significant increase in the electricity costs. Shouldn't we see an increase also in the cost of electricity here?
We haven't seen it. Sharon, that was just level funded for
Electricity? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, traffic light and street light electricity.
I feel like that line item has always had a little bit of excess in it, so even if there's an increase, it probably is still, because we tend to take money out of that at town meetings. Like, I feel like we have it at a certain surplus a little conservatively budgeted, so that sometimes
there's a 20% increase on the school side, right, for electricity.
But the lights are different though. The schools are using computers and other things. Maybe the lights are LEDs have more.
I mean, it's
drawing as
still,
much
you know,
electricity.
however many kilowatt hours you're using, if the cost per kilowatt hour goes up, then the
Unless
total
the schools are
expense.
adding things that are consuming more electricity, but yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, percentage wise.
Percentage wise, yeah, and they're using more efficient lights, but they're still using electricity to light, so.
I mean,
Oh, I'm gonna.
I think the only thing that,
Joe?
I was just gonna say, looking at those numbers, I mean, I could probably, it looks, there's clearly room that, traffic light electricity can go up 20%, or for that matter, almost 100%, and you'll be still under 10.
with the actuals.
Yeah.
When you look at the actuals for 22. But streetlight electricity doesn't have 20% kind of headroom, it has like 5% kind of headroom, so, that does make me share Jeremy's question.
Yeah, I'm trying to look back in the prior years to see where it ended up, but there's always a little bit left, but not that much. Let's see. Yeah, last year was maybe 10,000 left in it. So I just, where there's a little bit of leeway, maybe that's why we decided just to keep it.
And maybe that we
We'll
learned
find it.
about the electricity after the fact and didn't think about it.
Yeah. And I mentioned earlier that in the budget, we show a 20% increase because we were assuming a very large increase in RMLD rates. RMLD announced, I want to say in early February, that the rates were going to go up 9% instead of what we were expecting, which was 20%. So the actual increase, the actual spend should be closer to 9% increase versus a 20% increase, but we didn't modify it in the budget because it was already done deal.
So that does provide a little bit of a cushion, because I think you bring up a really good point, but I'm happy to hear there's a place in the budget you can look at and anticipate money should that happen.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So now, can you shift money between departments like that? So we've over budgeted for the school at 20% increase in electricity, but we've under budgeted perhaps for Public Works, so that Public Works is gonna have to find that $10,000 for the 9% electricity increase?
That's one option. Another option is if we're over budget, we'll go to town meeting, either in November or in April, and we do that on a routine basis. And it's usually okay as long as we can explain it, right? And it's things outside of our control. We have come to FinCom as well. If you recall, fuel last spring was absolutely crazy, and we came to FinCom as well.
The other thing to note is this traffic and street lighting is bottom line, and it's voted as its own line. There's also like maintenance and repair. If you look, maintenance and repair is really, really low.
Oh, wow.
And so we always have a little cushion there, and it has to do with the maintenance and repair line. So I think we probably didn't really think much about the increase in electricity, but if you look at what our actuals are for maintenance and repair, very low numbers. So we do still have some sort of cushion there, so we might still be fine.
Okay.
But if, to be honest, I don't think I even considered, oh, I should take that electricity from the accommodated cost and bring it over here. I don't think that I actually thought about that, but at the same time, I think I'm looking at what's actual, what's trending in the current year and all of that, and we haven't ever gotten close to the number we have budgeted, and tend to take a little money out at April town meeting, at the end of the year to do other things. And so I think that's probably why I was thinking, oh, we always have this cushion, but it's bottom line. So it's, you've got traffic light, street light, and then you have this maintenance, and it's bottom line, you can use it interchangeably. And they don't have any salaries here, but any one of these lines could be utilized.
Okay.
And it wouldn't take out of DPW because I can't add to it or take from it.
Because it's voted separate, yeah.
Right.
Just like snow and ice is voted by itself as well.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if there's any other. I think that might be it. Jackie? Mm-hmm. yeah, this is just, individual divisions within the department. Did you want to go through all of those? You can.
Anyone in the committee want to walk through this, or is looking at it sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, it's just minor, but like the COVID, I hope we don't have to use the money, but is that just like another kind of placeholder? Like like 8,000 for COVID and equipment?
We should probably take it out. It's just reusing like the formats that we've always had to pull in these charts, so we can get rid of the COVID.
Right, that's just our supply line, yeah.
Oh, so this is like the other one where you
This is kind
added
of rolling up,
COVID.
it's kind of rolling up expenses, and so that you're not looking at like a million lines.
So
It's summarizing, and COVID was one of the lines that used to show up here in the years during the pandemic, and I just didn't think to take it out.
So this isn't a situation where you'd remove that line. You would keep a supply line funded at that level. You would just change the label.
Just, yeah,
Okay.
exactly, 'cause it's
Correct.
probably a
Yeah.
zero there for COVID if you look at the detail.
Got it.
Which is.
And sanitizer.
All right. Anything else from the committee?
No, okay, and then water starts on page 192.
Okay.
It's after 76.
Oh,
You've got to skip the whole school budget.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Mind bending.
Yes. So we're moving on to the enterprise funds.
Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, water overall went up, 3.5%. Everybody within water for the most part, except for, there's a couple administrative staff who's split between general fund, water and sewer, so 25% of their salary would be in this, but other than that, everybody is, union personnel. So, yeah, that's financial reserves. Okay, next section, Jackie, which is easier to look at. Okay, so the salaries went up 3.1%. Again, all contractual. Really, there's no change here. There's no change in staffing on any of these either, but there was no real change in here. You see these up and downs. It's people moving between grades and whatnot, so there's nothing significant about their salary change. Next section, Jackie. The main thing here, we had to, there was an increase in police details. That was, 25% increase, because a lot of our work is out in the street, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't determine where that's going to be. So if we need police details, especially like, areas like Walker's Brook and various things like that, if that's just an automatic increase. The other part is we saw a jump up is in copper tubing. We had to go up significantly from 10 to 15,000 because we just wasn't catching up with the market. So those type of supplies went up, water parts and maintenance and that type of stuff. So other than that, there wasn't any real, significant increases in that. Sharon, maybe I don't know if you're going to talk to any of the health insurance or any of that, but for the most part.
That would have been in the accommodated cost section.
Yeah, you did that. Okay. All right, so that's it for the water.
Do you mind? I have a question on the water one, and it is
Sure.
about health insurance. I'm a little confused about the kind of trend from FY21 on. So a 2.7% increase in health insurance is great news. But then it looks like in the FY22 actual is significantly lower, and then FY21 actual is higher than that. That's just, I would have expected that to just go up, up, up every year.
Yeah, that does look interesting. But it is based on enrollment in health insurance. So we don't really necessarily know who's gonna enroll in our health insurance. Some people opt out and get paid, opt out. Some people take our insurance, and then there's also people moving around a lot, so it's really hard to know, but I think we stayed kind of somewhere in the realm of where we were. We have been seeing very low health insurance increases, although we just recently got a rate of 4.4. So it kind of concerns me, they only have 2.7 there, but looking at what our actuals have been trending, there probably is more excess there than really 2.7%, because we're looking at our actuals. But it's really hard to know, because when we're building the budget, we don't know who's really gonna be enrolled in our health insurance plan for each department. We don't really know what our rate of increase is, so we really do have to be somewhat conservative. So even though we're looking at numbers that are lower for actuals, it's best to stay conservative when it comes to health insurance.
That makes it such a big expense that you wouldn't want to be on the other side of that. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Anybody else on water?
So in the salaries, there's a negative number for snow removal. How does that work?
Where's this water?
The Water Enterprise Fund's salaries, the last line, snow removal is a negative. Back up one slide maybe, Jackie.
Oh, those are people that we reclass to snow and ice, I think. Is that right, Jane?
It's $7,500.
Like they're working on snow removal and they're a water employee, their salaries will be paid out of water, but then we will do an entry to move it to snow and ice. Does that sound right, Jane? I think you're muted.
Sorry, a couple of times a year, we do a transfer out for people that were in those divisions, enterprise divisions that worked on snow and ice during the day. If it's overtime, it's overtime, but if it's during the day, their time would get moved into the water and sewer, stormwater people would get moved into snow and ice. But we never know what that is, right? So,
Okay, thanks.
yeah.
I think you can move on.
Okay, so I guess the sewer, which is page, there you go, okay. Okay. Overall, the sewer went down 1.5. Trying to think of, oh, that was, all right, the debt. So again, with wages, no real change, all contractual. There wasn't really any change with SOAR at all. Let me see, we had some, in addition to, I put a few thousand extra into hazardous waste. Hazardous waste day comes out of, it's split between water and SOAR. So if you move it up, Jackie, on the expense side, it went up slightly, but salaries, like I said, are just contractual. There's nothing there, but the hazardous waste, which was, get the line that would have been in that. Quality and safety. That went up a couple of thousand. Because things are getting more expensive to get rid of, but that's it. Other than that, it's very flat. Very flat this year, thankfully. I don't know if Fidel had probably went over with you, the MWRA prelim assessments were very good. So hopefully the 0.6% in water and minus 0.8 in sewer, so hopefully that will hold.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? Go to stormwater, I guess. Stormwater is even more boring than the other two. No change, no change at all. You see a negative on the, that's just when people leave and we hire at a lower rate. So it looks like the wages went down, but that's all that is. And then we kept the expenses flat. So that's it.
I am sort of a broad question about the enterprise funds, and this actually might be more appropriate for you, Sharon.
Okay.
So the select board votes to use a certain level of reserves.
Yep.
To fund these. How, I'm gonna ask this question. How sustainable is that? I don't know much about that process.
And you can show your spreadsheet,
The one that we.
retained earnings, the 5-year return earnings.
Oh, I can show that, yes, absolutely, but I guess I was thinking this is the first year we're doing tiered billing, so the way that we've done it in the past is a little bit different, but let me pull that up for you. We do have quite a bit of reserves in certain areas, specifically in sewer, so it's important to see. I don't think we kind of focus a lot on what we have for reserves in that area. We're always focused on general fund free cash, but each one of the enterprise funds have their own certified surplus, and so he wants me to show you. I put something together based on a question yesterday, I think it was, that shows like the last 5 years what the balances are for water. You got it?
Okay. Well, you just sent me the balances. You didn't send me a spreadsheet. Or maybe if you
I did, I
Oh,
sent you a spreadsheet, yeah.
And I haven't had a chance to look at it because it was just yesterday.
Let me see where I've got this.
Now I want to look at it.
Sorry, it's gonna take me a second. I got it. All right, so now I can share it. And so you can see like what we have available in each one of the funds. Let me share. Get back to this screen.
I was curious because there's the sewer's going down, but there's a use of reserves. And like usually you use reserves because things are going up and you wish it would go up less.
Exactly.
Wow, but that seems blurry. Can you guys see that? So right now we're looking at, huh?
I can't.
Mike, I can see it now, I'm focusing, but okay. So water, if you recall, in recent years, we've had a lot of infrastructure work that's had to go on in water. So you can see in 2021, we had to take $1 million out. And then another 504. We spent a lot of money over 2021 and 2022. So our reserves went down to from 5.5 roughly down to like 3.960. So water was the area of concern because we had used so much free cash just for unexpected problems. Whereas if you look at sewer is almost $7 million in there. So there's certainly money to be utilized, and what we tend to do is try and use some of our free cash to stabilize the rate so as to avoid large increases year to year. And so where there is so much free cash here, I would see that would be why we want to use some to keep that rate level. Although this year it's going to be a little different because the consultant helped us with the tiered billing. Whereas in the past, we'd build our budget and then we'd kind of look at what our typical volume used is and what rate do we need to cover all this. And then you can add the free cash into the equation. And so it's kind of balancing act to try and say, okay, well, if I put this much free cash in, then the rate only has to go up this much. This is going to look a little different with the tiered billing. But in essence, it's still going to be the same sort of situation where you have to kind of weigh what do you have for reserves and without the reserves, what kind of increase would you be looking at? And then, and then you kind of balance it out. And where we're seeing sewer going up year after year in the certified surplus, I'm not surprised that we've got a larger number. I don't know if did I put the number in for the free cash or did you? I thought you did. But anyway, not knowing what the select board is going to decide, what you see there is kind of like our assumptions based on what we know currently.
And I think I'm taking the free cash, we usually talk about here mentality and applying it, but it doesn't really apply because in the event that you chose not to use any free cash, it's impacted in the rates. Unlike free cash here where you run out of free cash and it's a problem.
Exactly.
Okay, so
And
I
I
was
think-
worried about sustainability, but I forgot about the rate.
I feel like the consultant was surprised at the percentages that we maintain for the certified surplus. I think we're always trying to keep 30% of it in there, and they're like, oh, 15% is what we typically see. So when the consultant was looking at our reserves, they were thinking, wow, these are great, these are really high. We're at 30% in each one at least, and we were really worried about it because we're so used to be sitting on $5 million in water, and now all of a sudden we're at this just under 4. So we're probably a lot more conservative than others because they were surprised to see that level of reserve maintained. And this one here, stormwater, just for your knowledge, there's over $1 million in stormwater as well.
would it be possible to share that with the committee too, this spreadsheet?
Sure, yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
I'd like to look at it a little bit.
It's exactly the same as your free cash spreadsheet too, so it'll show you all the regeneration and all that stuff. that
It
you
does look familiar.
can- But it's just water, sewer and storm. So I will send that to you.
There's everybody.
Oh, I got a view of everything.
Is that everything that we said we were gonna get through tonight? Did I forget anything?
We can keep going if you want.
I'm satisfied.
I should
No.
too.
I think Ed's adamantly opposed.
Okay, so our next item on the agenda is future agendas. And Sharon, I think you're gonna, at our next meeting, give us an answer or sort of a resolution on that energy discrepancy between the facilities and the main.
It looks to me like it's just a difference between where that conservation is shown, like 1 year we're putting in one place and it's probably, I can get it fixed pretty quickly, so.
That'd be perfect. And we're doing the remaining town next week. We should finish it all, right?
I don't see a reason why not.
Get through the whole budget. And I don't think there's anything else on the agenda.
We will, we'll have to vote on the warrants, on the town meeting warrants.
Oh, yeah.
FinCom will have to vote on the budget first, and then vote on the warrants, and provide guidance for Ed on the FinCom report to the town meeting.
So note to FinCom members, if we're voting on the budget, there are a lot of line items that have to get voted separately. So it's probably good if we have everybody here, and no, or specifically nobody online.
Yes,
Oh!
Hell, hey,
yes.
no
David,
roll call
thank
vote
you.
is what he's
So we
asking.
don't have
And
to do
drink
a roll
water
call.
because we need a lot of motions.
Our level of incitement about voting by hand was high. That was so efficient.
I remember, line
Oh,
99,
seriously.
move
Oh
to
my
approve,
gosh, yeah,
second,
yeah.
Down the line.
all approved, all again, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just,
Great point, Jeffrey. If you can be here, it certainly will make the voting go faster. Did anybody, so there was a question about the assistant principal's school line items at our last meeting. We got some additional information.
Also not that spreadsheet.
Great.
Okay,
Does someone need something?
No,
I
Mary
don't
said
know.
that during her liaison report.
Yes, I'm literally just asking for future agenda. Do we need to talk about that further, or is everyone feeling like that has been?
I mean, the bottom line was the same, it's just a matter of what bucket it was classified in
Exactly.
munis.
Okay.
And normally at town meeting, they don't, you can't line item veto the school thing and they don't get to quite that level of detail. I think we just wanted to see where they'll explain, this is what we're, what we wanna add. But they don't look at it like the munis level. By giving us the munis budget, you can say, oh, why is this here? And I like it because it's just like with the town, you can see the percentage jumps and ask about things, but in the high level budget, you're not really sure, so I think we're okay. Did we get through all the town departments then?
Public safety.
We've got more next week.
Public safety, I think.
Which ones are left?
Public safety,
Oh,
Public
police and
health,
fire.
Fire and police.
Public safety, yeah. Okay,
And that's next Wednesday night.
next Wednesday night.
well, there's future agenda.
Anything else for future agendas?
It might be premature, but do we wanna look at, I don't know, I'm not excited bringing up like debt outside the levy, but do we wanna look at like forecast for some of the big numbers, what that would look like?
You mean for Killam?
Like Killam, a senior center, like whether it's 40 million, 80 million, like
Well, I think-
financing that, like, I don't know,
I
like
think the
just
first thing might be if the select board does take a vote on Harnden Street, cause that was tabled, right? And maybe by I don't think by next week though we'll have it, but a future agenda after that, the select board will have taken their vote, perhaps.
So I had that exact same thought earlier in the evening, and it's an interesting question because it's not on this town meeting, right?
Yeah.
But you're right, the way I was thinking about it is Sharon and Fidel should be ready to answer questions at town meeting about it, because it's absolutely gonna come up. I agree. Yeah, maybe we could have it on our agenda to review. I can't decide if I'm gonna defer to Ed. This is chair decision.
It's the Harnden Street purchase, so town meeting will be talking about that if that is, unless it's tabled, if they decide to go forward with it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, my reading of the tea leaves is that it will be definitely postponed, like it was in November.
Okay.
We will know for sure by the next select board meeting, but that's what I would expect.
do you think there would be value, I'm sort of thinking about what Joe was saying, because I agree, I feel like it was pre-November because it was before town meeting approved the $2.2 million for the design study. We had some like really high level conversations about the potential cost of Killam. And it was really like, nobody knows the number, nobody, like really with a lot of caveats, but it did give people a sense of scale of the project.
It was the consultant with like those 4 options or something.
Yes, yeah, assume the project's gonna cost like best case here, worst case here, reimbursement,
Now we have
worst
to
case,
throw those
best
numbers
case.
out because you're up even higher.
They're gonna be higher, but what is the feeling about?
Is it worth doing till we know where the design study's going to?
Yeah,
Or
maybe
is it-
it's
Are we just
premature.
repeating the same effort we had before?
Yeah,
Joe had something.
So, well, okay, so actually, this might be, I think it sounds like you were gonna talk about when we were talking about it, in terms of like, not being this town meeting. I mean, if there are no, Killam nor senior center, articles in this town meeting that don't get, that are actually that we're actually gonna discuss, then maybe we don't need to revisit it until we know more. If we're gonna touch either of those things with a 10-foot pole, then yes, we should be prepared to like, and there's a page from one of our packets in the fall that I have like printed to a separate page because people know that I'm on FinCom and they ask me how much Killam is gonna cost. And this was a sharing thing of the breaking out the cost per
worst case,
year,
120 number,
estimated
that's
impact
right.
per 100,000 home value, because that's something everybody's, well, I know how much my house costs. If you tell me it's going to be $88 per, 100,000 my house, then I can do the math. That answers, and obviously you had to pick an estimated cost. You had to pick a proposed MSBA share, neither of which were terribly, they were both fairly conservative. Heaven knows if they're conservative enough, but they certainly were trying.
Now it
We're
seems
trying.
like now we're like maybe not conservative
We are-
enough, but.
We're all really trying. So, yes.
But it gave you a visual aid for, okay, how much are we saving when those debt exclusions come off?
Yes.
And what could this look like? And putting numbers into it, put more context to it, I think, so people could see, okay, I'm gonna save roughly, an average home is gonna save maybe $300, and maybe this Killam School project would normally make that house go up $615 in taxes, but they're gonna see $300 worth of relief. So that makes it a lot more like doable for most people, yeah.
I think it's probably a little too early to be telling.
No, but that was presented in that way, though, this is our guess.
You're getting asked by people, I'd stay away from answering that one.
I try to
These
look
are
at
these are my
comparable,
friends, they don't let me go.
look at comparable communities and see what's happening. Like Winchester just had an elementary school, I think 97 million, and the state's given them 20%, and then they computed what it was gonna cost. And then you've got another extreme at Wakefield, but I think sometimes it's easier to look.
That's a high school, I think, Wakefield.
Right, Wakefield's much bigger, but Winchester had an elementary school. You start I kind of get the sense, just been monitoring this, like, I don't think we'd ever get more than 25% from MSBA based on what I'm seeing with Winchester and Stoneham and Andover. So right away, that would affect those we could revisit it with only realistic numbers if we wanted.
I do feel like that's a little premature, and I think we're getting into the school department stuff.
Not the
Yeah.
same.
I personally really liked what Joe just said. I like the guidance of if we're voting on any articles that have to do with building Killam or building the senior center, we should be prepared with some, as high level, even if they're very high level, but some number. If there's nothing in the warrant that we're voting on that covers those two buildings, I think I might just suggest to the school department, be ready to answer those questions. Someone may ask, because everyone's talking about Killam, and be ready to answer the questions. That's sort of where I'm at with it. Ed, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, Phil, this, I don't know if you've already shared this, I know I've seen it, but when, I don't know what the exact, I don't know where the MSRB, meeting or not, but there was a couple slides in that presentation that actually kind of talked to what Marianne was talking about, but I also thought that there were some positives in there, and that they may be looking at additional funding might be the wrong word, but there may be some things I don't know if that's something that we can share with FinCom, at some point. Again, to Joe's question, but I also think that we might be there's a glimmer of hope, for lack of a better term. I'm sorry, it's a little bit late here, so I'm getting a little bit punchy, I think that might be something to share and probably have a discussion, maybe after, or, at some point, whether it's pre-town meeting or after town meeting, just about that, and there might be some kind of glimmer of hope about, what the funding sources might be and the amounts.
I have a question.
Just 1 second, and just because you are the chair and I'm just holding the gavel tonight, is your take okay on that approach? Having Fidel and Sharon prepared to answer some broad level expense questions if either the senior center or Killam are on the warrant, and if not, just make sure they're ready to answer questions if they come up? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
The senior center is the only possible one.
Right. But if the senior center is, people are going to want to know the Killam numbers before they make the decision. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point, knowing other things, and they really won't know the Killam because the feasibility study
Yeah, I don't know.
barely started.
Everything would be guessing at this point. The other thing I wondered is, and maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly, but I thought the MSBA quota is a 46% reimbursement. And then I know it's not ever going to be actually 46% because they don't reimburse you for everything and they don't certainly do today's construction costs. So it may not work out to 46%, but I'm hoping it wouldn't be as low as, 28%, but who knows, but the estimate that we gave at town meeting was a 30% reimbursement on $100 million project. So I think we might be in the ballpark if Winchester's numbers are 100 million.
I think a lot of that depends on the feasibility study too, so there's a lot.
But that's what I mean, I don't know what else we could do with the numbers at this point,
Yeah,
because I don't really
I think
know anything more.
I actually not even sure that there's much, it might just be Joe's friends that are just asking questions. I think everyone else doesn't really care.
It is not just, I've been asked this question by multiple people, you're not alone.
No, but I do think it's good that there's awareness, and I think there's good that there's questions. I think at this point it's still premature, and I think that it's better to be over prepared. But I just don't think that there's not really much other information for us to be able to glean and to educate. I think the last thing that we published, or that we didn't publish it, but Sharon did. I take ownership for all your stuff, Sharon. That's the latest, and that's still valid. So I don't think that's, I don't think there's much else that, we need to prepare for. Again, and there's nothing that we're going to vote on. So it may come up anecdotally in town meeting. There's a lot of stuff that comes up in town meeting that's off script. So we should probably be prepared for that.
Fair point. All right, do we want to talk about minutes?
Actually, Jane, can I say one thing? And I know that most of the folks that were on have left, but the one thing I just want to be able to kind of, I took a couple of notes just from some commentary from Joe and Jane and others, and it's just kind of a common thing. I don't know who to thank, but consistently we hear that our contracts that we have are favorable. And I've been touching wood, I've been crossing fingers, I've been doing everything that I can. I don't know if it's luck or skill, probably a little bit of combination of both and timing. But Joe mentioned energy contracts, and he mentioned the cleaning contracts, and I know we've talked with Jane about about our rubbish contract, and all of them have just been so favorable for the town, and I don't think we do a great job of just acknowledging and thanking you and the department heads for what they do and how they do it, because it's something I think we ended up just kind of taking for granted. We hear these comparisons anecdotally, in these discussions, and I'm consistently blown away by it. So it's a huge thank you for, and a token of appreciation for, for that. The town, kind of benefits, multiple times over, and I'll give you credit, I know you've only been here for a song, but, but that's really, it is something, that's really to be lauded.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Oh, hey, there's still some people on, oh, good, I'm glad that, I wish I prepared better, Joe, and Jane, I would've said it better, but you guys were already gone.
All right, okay, minutes?
Yeah, motion to approve the minutes from March 1st.
Second.
Thank you. Anyone want to discuss the minutes? Are we ready for a vote? I'm gonna start with you, Ed.
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jean's yes. Joe?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you. I just echo completely everything that Ed said. We do take a lot for granted in terms of really tight budgeting and really excellent management. So thank you to everyone who presented tonight and stayed late to talk. I will say, Fidel, you and Sharon, you both pointed out the budget document looks a little different. I love it. I think it's excellent. I think it's really readable. I think it's something that any town meeting member could open up and fully understand. So it sort of finds a great balance between transparency and readability. So great work.
If you could make it longer, that'd be, but I'd like it if it's a little bit bulkier.
I'd like more fold-out pages at the back.
It wasn't thick enough for our liking. If you could add a few more pages, that'd be great.
We're on. That was all Jackie and Jane Wellman, just so you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic work.
Thanks, Jack.
And before we adjourn for the evening, particularly Ed, I know you've had a long day, so thank you for all that you do. And I was thinking about that today. I was teasing Ed via text, like, you shouldn't come to the meeting, like, it's okay, we've got this. And he's like, no, I'm coming. And I was thinking about all of us, and truly all of us, and I'll pat ourselves on the back a little bit. We all could have been home tonight and with our spouses and with our kids and catching up on work emails, so tomorrow we'll go more smoothly, and we're all here last week, this week, next week, doing this work as volunteers, so very grateful for the whole committee.
I can't echo that enough. I'm super appreciative of, again, I heard the meeting ran well last week. I had to watch it to understand it, jury's still out, in my opinion. But again, Jane, thank you so much for I do appreciate it, but I appreciate all your efforts. I mean, you wouldn't know that we have an opening. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's true.
Each of you have done. Are so well prepared. The questions are, kind of off the charts. The preparedness, the rigor. It's really impressive. And again, you kudos to all of you as well. That the town is much better for it. I can say this more remotely. If I was in the room, I wouldn't say these nice things. But I'm remote. I can say that.
Thank you, Ed. And thanks, everybody. With that, anybody else want to have any conversation, or should we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, we have to roll call this. Ed?
You have to know what you do, and the chair should go last.
Oh.
This is the things that I know, the chair should go last in the vote. I don't know, I've read that somewhere.
Okay, I will go last, but I will tell you, the last week of this week, I've had a gavel that I keep forgetting to use. I've got it. I'm ready to go.
Feels good.
It feels great. Okay, Ed?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
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 Jean says yes. We're adjourned.
Good night, folks.
Oh.